Karen's blood boiled as the internet connection cut out for the third time that afternoon. She had paid for premium high-speed internet, and yet, here she was, sitting uselessly in front of a spinning loading icon. With an indignant huff, she slammed her laptop shut and stormed out of her home office, determined to get to the bottom of this outage. Stomping down the stairs, Karen could hear her husband John in the living room, engrossed in a video game. "John, the internet is down again," she yelled, startling him mid-match. "What? Again?" he exclaimed, pausing the game and rushing to check the router. "I just reset it this morning. This is ridiculous." "That's it. I'm calling the provider," Karen declared, already tapping furiously at her phone. After being bounced through several automated menus, she finally reached a customer service agent. "Hello. How can I assist you today?" the agent asked in a monotone voice. "This is Karen Johnson, and I'm calling about my internet service. It keeps cutting out, and I'm paying for the highest package you offer," she fumed. "I need someone to come out and fix this immediately." The agent tried to calmly explain that there might be an issue with the local infrastructure, but Karen refused to listen. "I don't care about your excuses. I want a technician here in the next hour, or I'm canceling my service." After some more arguing, the agent finally agreed to send someone over, though they couldn't guarantee an arrival time. Satisfied, Karen hung up and turned to John. "There, it's all taken care of. Now I can get back to work." John sighed, knowing better than to argue with his wife when she was in one of her moods. "All right, I guess I'll just have to wait it out then." As the afternoon dragged on, Karen grew increasingly impatient, pacing the living room and making frequent trips to the front window, waiting for the technician to arrive. When the doorbell finally rang, she flung the door open, ready to give the poor guy an earful. "Finally. What took you so long?" she snapped at the technician, a young man in his mid-20s who looked utterly bewildered by her outburst. I got here as soon as I could, ma'am," he stammered, taken aback by her aggressive tone. "Well, hurry up and fix it then. I've been waiting all day." Karen ushered him inside and practically shoved him towards the router. The technician quickly got to work, checking the connections and running a few diagnostics. "It seems the issue is with the main line serving your neighborhood. There may be a problem at the junction box down the street," he explained. "What? So you can't fix it right now?" Karen's voice rose in pitch, her face flushing with anger. "I'm afraid not, ma'am. I'll need to call in a crew to come take a look at the main line. That could take a few hours, at least." "A few hours?" Karen screeched. "Absolutely not. You're going to stay here until my internet is back up and running. Do you understand?" The technician stared at her, dumbfounded. "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I have other customers to attend to. You'll stay here until my speed is full." Karen shoved the technician back inside and slammed the door, locking it behind her. John watched in stunned silence as his wife stormed off, leaving the bewildered technician trapped in their living room. The technician, whose name tag read Tom, stared at the closed door in disbelief. He had dealt with demanding customers before, but this woman had taken things to a whole new level. Cautiously, he approached the door and tried the handle, only to find it firmly locked. Ma'am, please let me out," he called out, hoping reason would prevail. "I need to get back to work and help other customers." From the other side of the door, Karen's voice rang out. "No way. You're staying right there until my internet is fixed. I'm not paying for this premium service to have it cut out every 5 minutes." Tom sighed, realizing he was now a prisoner in this stranger's home. Casting his gaze around the living room, he spotted John sitting on the couch, eyes glued to the paused video game on the TV. Excuse me, sir. Do you think you could maybe help me out here?" Tom pleaded. John grimaced, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Sorry, man. You don't want to get on Karen's bad side. It's best if you just do what she says." But I have other appointments. I can't just sit here all day, Tom argued, his frustration growing. Trust me, it's not worth it, John replied, shaking his head. Once Karen sets her mind to something, there's no changing it. Defeated, Tom slumped down on the couch, resigning himself to his temporary captivity. Meanwhile, Karen paced back and forth in the kitchen, glaring at her phone as she waited for the internet provider to call back. After what felt like an eternity, her phone finally rang. This is Karen Johnson. What's the status on my internet? She demanded. Ma'am, I apologize for the inconvenience, but our technicians are still working to resolve the issue on the main line. It may take several more hours, the agent explained cautiously. Several hours? Karen shrieked, causing Tom to flinch from the other room. That's unacceptable. I pay a premium for this service, and I expect it to work. The agent tried to reason with her, but Karen was having none of it. Look, I don't care what you have to do, but I want my internet back up and running within the next 30 minutes, or I'm taking my business elsewhere. Do you understand? The agent, sensing the futility of arguing further, conceded. I'll do my best to expedite the repairs, ma'am. Please give us some time. Satisfied, Karen ended the call and marched back into the living room, where Tom and John both eyed her warily. All right, the technicians are working on it. You, she pointed at Tom, are going to stay here until it's fixed. No leaving, no calling for backup. Got it. Tom opened his mouth to protest, but the glare Karen shot him made the words die in his throat. Slumping back against the couch, he resigned himself to his fate, praying the repairs would be completed sooner rather than later. As the minutes ticked by, the tension in the room grew palpable. Karen paced back and forth, glancing anxiously at the clock, while John tried unsuccessfully to resume his video game. Tom, for his part, sat in silence, wondering how he had ended up in this bizarre predicament. After what felt like an eternity, Karen's phone finally rang. She snatched it up, her expression shifting from impatience to cautious hope. Hello? Ma'am, this is the internet provider. I'm calling to let you know that our technicians have identified and resolved the issue on the main line. Your internet service should be fully restored. Karen's face lit up with triumph. Excellent. It's about time. I expect a credit on my next bill for the inconvenience. Of course, ma'am. We'll make sure that's taken care of. I hope you have a good rest of your day. With that, Karen ended the call and turned to Tom, who had been sitting quietly on the couch. All right, you're free to go. But if this happens again, I'll make sure you never work in this town again, understand? Tom didn't need to be told twice. He practically leaped off the couch and made a beeline for the door, desperate to escape the clutches of the irate woman. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, he mumbled, fumbling with the lock before practically throwing himself out the door. As Tom scurried away, Karen closed the door with a satisfied huff, turning to face her husband. Well, that's taken care of. Now I can get back to work. John, who had been silently observing the entire ordeal, shook his head in disbelief. You know, Karen, that was a bit much, even for you. The poor guy was just trying to do his job. Karen waved a dismissive hand. Oh, please. He was the one dragging his feet. I had to take charge to get my internet back. But you locked him in our house. John protested. That's got to be illegal or something. Please, John, don't be so dramatic. I was just ensuring he fulfilled his duty. It's not like I hurt him or anything. Karen rolled her eyes and marched back to her office, leaving John to ponder the ethics of his wife's actions. As the day wore on, Karen immersed herself in her work, her productivity soaring now that the internet was functioning properly. John, on the other hand, couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in the pit of his stomach. Later that evening, as they sat down for dinner, John decided to broach the subject again. Karen, I really think you should apologize to that technician. What you did was wrong, and it could have serious consequences. Karen scoffed, stabbing at her salad with her fork. Apologize? For what? I got my internet back, didn't I? He should be thanking me for keeping him on task. But you held him against his will. John insisted. That's not okay, Karen. You can't just do whatever you want, regardless of how it affects other people. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Karen dismissed. It's not like I tied him up or anything. He was free to leave whenever he wanted. John sighed, realizing he was getting nowhere. I just hope you understand that actions have consequences, Karen. Sooner or later, this kind of behavior is going to catch up with you. Karen merely rolled her eyes and continued eating, unwilling to entertain the idea that she had done anything wrong. As far as she was concerned, she had simply taken matters into her own hands to ensure her internet was restored. The fact that she had inconvenienced or frightened the technician was of little concern to her. Little did Karen know, however, that her actions were about to have a much more significant impact than she could have imagined. The next morning, Karen was once again immersed in her work, confident that her internet woes were a thing of the past. As she sipped her coffee, her phone suddenly rang, the caller ID displaying the name of the internet provider. Furrowing her brow, Karen answered the call. Hello, this is Karen. Mrs. Johnson, this is the manager from XYZ Internet. I'm calling to discuss an incident that occurred yesterday involving one of our technicians. Karen's heart sank, a knot of dread forming in the pit of her stomach. An incident? What are you talking about? The manager's voice was stern, leaving no room for argument. I've been informed that you refused to allow one of our technicians to leave your home until the internet issue was resolved. Is this true? Caught off guard, Karen hesitated for a moment before replying. Well, yes, but only because he was taking too long to fix the problem. I pay for premium service, and I expect it to work. I understand your frustration, Mrs. Johnson, but that does not justify holding one of our employees against their will. That is a serious offense, and it will not be tolerated. Karen's eyes widened as the realization of her actions dawned on her. Wait, are you saying there will be consequences? But I was just trying to get my internet fixed. I'm afraid so, the manager replied sternly. The technician has filed a formal complaint, and we have no choice but to take disciplinary action. You are hereby banned from our services, effective immediately. What? Karen exclaimed, her voice rising in both pitch and volume. You can't do that. I'm one of your top-paying customers. I'm sorry, Mrs. Johnson, but the decision has been made. We simply cannot risk having our technicians held hostage by irate customers. I suggest you explore alternative internet providers in the area. With that, the manager ended the call, leaving Karen in a state of stunned disbelief. She sat there, phone in hand, her mind racing as she tried to process what had just happened. Suddenly, a thought occurred to her, and she dialed the number for the local police station. Yes, hello, this is Karen Johnson. I'd like to report a crime. One of your officers needs to come to my house immediately. The dispatcher on the other end of the line sounded slightly confused. Ma'am, can you please explain what the nature of the emergency is? The internet company just banned me from their services, Karen exclaimed, her voice laced with outrage. Surely that's illegal. I demand that you send someone over here right away to sort this out. The dispatcher paused for a moment, likely weighing the appropriate response. Ma'am, I'm sorry, but that doesn't sound like a matter for the police. If you have a dispute with your internet provider, you'll need to resolve that through their customer service channels or seek legal counsel. Karen's face flushed with anger. But you don't understand. They're ruining my life. I need you to do something about this immediately. I'm afraid I can't do that, ma'am, the dispatcher replied calmly. If you'd like to file an official complaint, you'll need to do so through the proper channels. But the police cannot intervene in a private business dispute. With that, the dispatcher ended the call, leaving Karen fuming. She slammed the phone down on the table, her hands trembling with rage. How dare they do this to her? She was a valued customer, and they were simply going to cut her off like that. Determined to fight back, Karen stormed out of the house, intent on confronting the internet provider in person. She was going to make them understand the gravity of their mistake, even if she had to shout it from the rooftops. Fuming with rage, Karen stormed into the internet provider's local office, her eyes blazing with fury. The receptionist looked up, startled by the woman's aggressive demeanor. "I need to speak to the manager right now," Karen demanded, slamming her hand on the counter. The receptionist hesitated for a moment, taken aback by Karen's outburst. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but the manager is in a meeting at the moment. Is there something I can assist you with?" "No, you cannot assist me," Karen snapped. "I am Karen Johnson, and I demand to speak to the manager immediately. This is an outrage, and I won't rest until it's resolved." The receptionist, sensing the futility of arguing, quickly excused herself and disappeared through a door at the back of the office. Within minutes, the manager emerged, a concerned expression on his face. "Mrs. Johnson, what seems to be the problem?" he asked, hoping to de-escalate the situation. "The problem is that you've banned me from your services," Karen seethed, her voice trembling with anger. "I am one of your top-paying customers, and you have the audacity to cut me off." The manager raised a hand, trying to calm the irate woman. "Mrs. Johnson, I understand your frustration, but the decision has been made. Your actions yesterday were unacceptable, and we cannot risk our employees being held against their will." "Unacceptable," Karen scoffed. "I was simply trying to get the internet service I'm paying for. How dare you punish me for that?" "Ma'am, you locked one of our technicians in your home," the manager stated firmly. "That is a serious offense, and we have to take it seriously. We cannot condone that kind of behavior, no matter the circumstances." Karen's eyes narrowed, her jaw set in a defiant expression. "Well then, I'll just take my business elsewhere. I'm sure there are plenty of other internet providers who would be happy to have a customer like me." The manager shook his head. "I'm afraid that's not possible, Mrs. Johnson. As of now, you are banned from our services, and all of our affiliated providers have been notified of the situation." "What? You can't do that." Karen's voice rose to a near hysterical pitch. "This is discrimination. I'll sue you for everything you're worth." The manager sighed, already anticipating this response. "Mrs. Johnson, I understand you're upset, but threatening legal action will not change the outcome. Our decision is final. I suggest you start exploring alternative internet options in the area." With that, the manager turned and walked away, leaving Karen standing in the middle of the office, her face flushed with rage. She glared at the retreating figure, her hands clenched into tight fists at her sides. Storming out of the office, Karen knew she couldn't accept defeat. This was an injustice, a personal affront to her very way of life. She was determined to fight back, no matter the cost. As she drove home, Karen's mind raced with possible strategies. She would not go down without a fight. This was war, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to emerge victorious. As soon as Karen burst through the front door, John could tell something was terribly wrong. Her face was flushed with rage, and her eyes blazed with the fiery determination he had seen all too many times before. "Karen, what happened?" he asked cautiously, bracing himself for the impending storm. "What happened?" Karen spat, her voice dripping with venom. "That incompetent internet company has banned me from their services." John's eyes widened in surprise. "Banned you? But how? Why?" "Because of that technician I kept here yesterday," Karen fumed, pacing back and forth in the living room. "They had the audacity to call it holding him against his will. Can you believe the nerve of those people?" John winced, already anticipating the consequences of Karen's actions. "Karen, you know that was wrong, right? You can't just lock someone in our house like that." "Wrong?" Karen scoffed. It was the only way to get them to fix the internet. I pay a premium for that service, and I expect it to work. But Karen, you can't do that, John pleaded, hoping to reason with his wife. There are proper channels to address issues with a service provider. Holding an employee captive is illegal, and now you're paying the price for it. Illegal? Karen's voice rose in pitch, her eyes narrowing dangerously. This is an outrage. I'm the one who's being wronged here, and they're the ones facing consequences. That's not how this works, John. Sensing the futility of his argument, John sighed and ran a hand through his hair. So, what are you going to do now? Karen's expression shifted from one of outrage to a calculating determination. What am I going to do? I'm going to fight this, of course. This isn't over by a long shot. She strode over to her laptop and began furiously typing, her fingers flying across the keyboard. John watched, a sense of dread settling in the pit of his stomach, as Karen navigated to various websites and social media platforms. Karen, what are you doing? He asked, his voice tinged with concern. What does it look like I'm doing? Karen snapped. I'm going to expose this company for the incompetent, unethical business they are. They're going to regret the day they messed with Karen Johnson. John groaned inwardly, knowing full well that his wife's idea of exposing the company would likely involve a barrage of scathing reviews, angry social media posts, and possibly even contacting local news outlets. Karen, please, think this through, he pleaded. This is only going to make things worse. You need to let it go and find a new internet provider. Let it go. Karen's eyes narrowed, and she fixed John with a glare that could have melted titanium. Not a chance. This is a matter of principle now. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of company they're dealing with. With that, Karen turned her attention back to the screen, her fingers flying as she drafted post after post, each one more vitriolic than the last. John could only watch in dismay, knowing that once Karen set her mind to something, there was no stopping her. As the hours ticked by, Karen's social media accounts exploded with her scathing commentary, and the internet provider's online reviews quickly became flooded with angry one-star ratings and scathing testimonials. It was a relentless campaign of retaliation, fueled by Karen's unshakable sense of entitlement and her unwavering belief that she was the true victim in this scenario. As Karen's online assault on the internet provider continued, the fallout began to ripple through the community. The company's reputation took a massive hit, with customers and prospective clients alike voicing their concerns and hesitations about doing business with them. The manager, who had dealt with Karen's initial confrontation, found himself at the center of the storm. Calls and emails flooded his inbox, each one more hostile and demanding than the last. The once respected provider was now the subject of intense scrutiny and criticism. Desperate to regain control of the situation, the manager decided to take drastic action. He reached out to Karen, hoping to negotiate a resolution that would put an end to the relentless social media onslaught. Mrs. Johnson, I understand you're upset, but this harassment is unacceptable, the manager said, his voice tense and strained. You're causing real damage to our business, and we can't allow it to continue. Karen, however, was far from willing to compromise. Harassment, she scoffed. I'm merely exercising my right to free speech and holding your company accountable for its actions. If you hadn't wrongfully banned me, none of this would be happening. The manager sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose in frustration. Mrs. Johnson, the decision has been made, and it's not going to change. But if you agree to stop this campaign of misinformation and defamation, we may be willing to reconsider your ban. Karen's eyes narrowed, and a devious grin spread across her face. Reconsider, you say? Well, now we're getting somewhere. But I have a few conditions of my own. The manager braced himself, anticipating the worst. And what would those be? First, I want a full refund for the time my internet was down, as well as a year's worth of free service to make up for the inconvenience, Karen demanded. And second, "I'd want a public apology from your company, admitting that they were wrong to ban me in the first place." The manager's jaw clenched, his knuckles turning white as he gripped the phone. "Mrs. Johnson, that's simply not going to happen. We've already incurred significant damage to our reputation because of your actions, and we can't reward that kind of behavior." "Then I guess we're at an impasse," Karen replied coolly. "Because I have no intention of stopping my campaign until I get what I want. You have 24 hours to reconsider, or I'll make sure your company is run into the ground." With that, she hung up the phone, leaving the manager to stew in his own frustration and despair. He knew that Karen was serious, and that her relentless pursuit of vengeance could very well spell the end of the company he had dedicated his life to building. As the clock ticked away, the manager weighed his options, each one more unpalatable than the last. Capitulate to Karen's demands and risk setting a dangerous precedent, or stand firm and watch as his company crumbled under the weight of her onslaught. It was a lose-lose situation, and the manager knew that no matter what he decided, the fallout would be severe. The once thriving internet provider was now teetering on the edge of ruin, all because of one woman's uncompromising sense of entitlement. As the manager grappled with his decision, the pressure from all sides continued to mount. Karen's online campaign showed no signs of slowing, and the company's reputation was in free fall. Customers were canceling their subscriptions in droves, and potential clients were wary of doing business with the embattled provider. The manager knew that he had to act quickly, but the decision weighed heavily on his conscience. Giving in to Karen's demands would set a dangerous precedent, but refusing to do so could mean the end of the company he had worked so hard to build. Finally, after much deliberation, the manager made his choice. He picked up the phone and steeled himself as he dialed Karen's number. "Mrs. Johnson, I've given this a lot of thought, and I'm prepared to accept your conditions," the manager said, his voice laced with resignation. Karen's eyes lit up with triumph. "Excellent. I knew you'd come around eventually." "But," the manager interrupted, "this is a one-time offer. If you continue to harass my employees or damage our reputation further, the deal is off, and we'll pursue legal action." Karen scoffed. "Legal action? Please, you don't have a leg to stand on. I hold all the cards here, and you know it." The manager sighed, knowing that she was right. "Very well. I'll have the refund and free service credited to your account immediately, and we'll issue a public apology on our website and social media channels." "That's more like it," Karen replied smugly. "I knew you'd see things my way eventually." With that, the manager ended the call, his shoulders sagging with the weight of his decision. He knew that he had just set a dangerous precedent, one that could embolden other entitled customers to engage in similar behavior. As the public apology went live, the backlash from the company's loyal customers was swift and unforgiving. Many accused the manager of caving to the demands of a bully, and they vowed to take their business elsewhere. The manager watched helplessly as the company's reputation continued to plummet. Customers abandoned them in droves, and the future of the business hung in the balance. All because one woman had refused to accept responsibility for her actions. Karen, on the other hand, was ecstatic. She had won, and she knew it. The internet provider had learned the hard way that crossing Karen Johnson had consequences, and she relished the thought of her victory. As she sat back and basked in her triumph, John watched from the sidelines, shaking his head in disbelief. He had tried to warn her, to reason with her, but his pleas had fallen on deaf ears. Now the fallout from her actions had the potential to devastate not only the company, but their own lives as well. John sighed, wondering if there would ever be a day when Karen would learn that her sense of entitlement and her refusal to take responsibility for her actions had consequences. But for now, it seemed that the only thing Karen was interested in was her own personal victory, no matter the cost.